Okay.
Hello, I'm Maggie McDaniel from the Plainfield branch of Kent District Library, and this is Maggie's book recommendation for the month. Are you feeling buffeted by the ice and snow this winter? Well, how about reading a story about the ice and snow called In the Kingdom of Ice by Hampton. Hampton is a wonderful author who writes narrative nonfiction, which is nonfiction that is so well written and so smoothly progressing that it's almost like reading a novel. He doesn't write very many books. He does a lot of research, and so whenever a new one comes out, I'm usually the first in line, and this one was no disappointment. This was about a polar expedition that was actually launched by James Gordon Bennett. Now, you may not recognize that name, but he was the eccentric publisher of the New York Herald during the 1800s, and his theory of news was you don't only report the news, you also create it. He's the one that hired Henry Morton Stanley to go into the heart of Africa and discover where Livingston was hanging out, even though Livingston really didn't need rescuing. And he also was very interested in polar expedition. During the 1800s, the general theory was that the North Pole was actually a warm, semi-tropical sea girdled by ice. And if you could only get through the ice, you could sail easily from one side of the Arctic to the other, just like sailing in the Caribbean. Most people who did polar expeditions and polar exploration during the 1800s went up through Greenland. But the one that James Gordon Bennett sponsored was a little different. It went up through the Bering Strait between Alaska and Russia. The pilot of the boat, or the captain, was named George Washington De Long, and he was an Army officer. His ship was called the Jeannette. They went in 1989 to see if they could make their way to the North Pole and find the much coveted Northwest Passage through the Arctic. And they had every confidence that once they got through the ice barrier, that they would be able to sail on semi-tropical seas. They left San Francisco in a outfitted boat. In fact, the boat was so outfitted with supplies that it could barely wallow along, and that was one of the problems. It took it 3 months to get up to where the ice was. By then, it was September. The ice was closing in, and the poor little Jeannette was nipped in the ice, which meant it was stuck fast. Her crew of about 30 people spent 21 months just drifting around in the Arctic. They were heading mainly northwest, so they were going past Siberia. And at first, during the first couple of years, it was okay, but then, unfortunately, the ice ground their ship and it sank. And their only prospect for salvation was a 1,000-mile trek over the ice and through the icy polar seas until they got to the Lena River Delta, which was in Siberia. Way up here in the freezing cold Arctic. So here we have 30 men hauling sleds over the ice with all their supplies. I wonder if they're going to make it. It was an unbelievably grueling adventure. So if you like thrilling adventure stories and you want to feel particularly cozy in your Michigan winter, take a look at In the Kingdom of Ice by Hampton.